So we're back here at the HolmFront, and we're going to discuss Rotten Disparities again, and we're going to go over my favorite topic, Star Wars. Welcome to the HolmFront. Whoops.
What happened?
Nothing. Something I got to address after the show. Hi, welcome to the HolmFront.
Hello.
I'm Tyler. I'll be your host for today, and this is my co-host, Mitch, also known as my overly artistic friend.
That is me.
I'm going to try and make this name stick, so we're just going to keep calling him OAF. OAF. However we want to label. I'm going to get you a shirt
Says
with
OAF on it.
OAF, yeah. And maybe it'll like do the whole down thing, overly artistic friend.
I find it interesting that you think I would appreciate that.
You're going to wear it for me. It's my show. So, we're going to be talking about some super fun stuff today.
Yes, we are.
Depends on what you mean by fun. So last night, I subjected you to some horrors. Would you like to elaborate on how you feel about that?
So I had seen The Force Awakens in theaters, and when I saw that movie, I thought to myself, okay, Star Wars is over, but this can work as fun sci-fi movies.
Sure.
And then I saw Last Jedi, I think only because you had seen it, and you sent me a text. I'd never heard you so distraught, I think, in my whole life before. It was like I was talking to someone else entirely. It was confused. It was disoriented. I said, well, was it a good movie or a bad movie? And you said, I don't know, after a very long extended pause. So I was like, sheesh, I have to see this. What is it? I saw that. It was terrible. And then at that point, I was like, I think I'm done. I think I've had my fill. I think I watched some of the spinoffs at some point, just for the humor of it. And then last night, we finally made that final crescendo and saw Rise of Skywalker. It was bad. It was a bad movie.
Don't even elaborate. It's bad. Yeah. So to give some context, I grew up on Star Wars, and it was like whole world. Loved it. Everything about it. I loved the first three movies. I remember my parents brought home Return of the Jedi was the first one I ever saw. Don't know why that happened, but that's the way it happened. And I remember it clearly.
Yeah.
So I saw it, and I was just blown away. And I remember like turning around. I was like, Are there more? And they're like, I think so. Yeah, we grew up with these movies. I think there's a couple more or something. So they watched the other two as was their custom before they allowed us to watch anything, and fast forward all the death scenes and stuff.
All
And
the
then,
good parts.
Yeah, all the great parts. Every time a lightsaber turned on, it's like, no. So, and then in '99, when Phantom Menace came out, I wasn't allowed to watch any of those movies. In their opinion, they're too dark.
Sheltered past.
Very sheltered, yeah. I was like 8 when it came out, too. So, I was not making my own decisions. So I didn't get to see any of the prequels until much, much later.
Mm-hmm.
So, the Force Awakens, I almost said Rise of Skywalker. Force Awakens was the first Star Wars film I got to see in theaters. And at the time, I was dating somebody.
Mm-hmm.
We were supposed to go together. We ended up breaking up.
I was like,
of
watching that movie.
Screw it. I'm going to go watch this movie. I'm seeing a Star Wars movie in theaters. So I went and I just watched it. I saw that like 3 times all by myself. I saw that movie in theaters.
Yeah, you had a very warm reaction to that movie when it first came out, huh?
Yeah. Part of it was a bit of deception on my part, because I was like, I had rose-tinted goggles on, and like I do hold some warmth towards that movie just in general.
A lot of people feel that way about that movie,
Right.
to be fair, and I don't think it's a wrong stance to have. It really revitalized Star Wars. It had a lot of, there was a lot of good entertainment value in it.
Right. So I had problems with it, but also it left enough room
to potentially fix them in future
to move
entries.
forward. Yeah. So on an audience level, because this one, and actually so this one, we're starting in a weird, but this one had obviously super warm. Super warm
Yeah,
reception.
critics and audiences. Critics actually like it more than audiences,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah, I think so I think it did a couple of different things that, and I'll jump a little bit into the critics section because I know a lot of what they were doing here. He used a lot of techniques that Lucas used for filmmaking. He used similar cameras, a lot of practical effects.
Yeah.
Like he did a lot to make it look very familiar.
Yeah.
Because the prequels obviously ran away from that.
It had no soul, but it looked like it did.
It deceived you pretty well. It had a lot of beats there that were familiar without necessarily having any of the connecting points that made any sense.
Yeah.
So audience loved it because it looked a lot like old Star Wars. It was like jumping back in the theater and watching. It was basically a remake of New Hope.
Yeah.
So my problems with it were that it wasn't expounding upon previous material. So there's that. Not in a proper way, at least. So on a storytelling level, I was like, okay. But I was ready with this to be like, well, let's see what happens with the next one.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And we're not going to spend too much time on this one because this one does not have a disparity, and this is Rotten Disparities. We're going to go into The Last Jedi. So let's start here, and then we'll go into what happened last night.
I can't even get my background.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah. Well, that's right. I forgot. I was leading into what you had already said. I watched this movie with a group of friends, and I was expecting it to be good. I was like,
okay.
I was
That's
like,
where
all
you're
right.
going with this. That makes
Yeah,
sense
and
now.
I didn't see it with you.
Right.
So I remember sending a text afterwards because
It's a weird text.
and I had a weird experience. So
Yeah.
I'm a highly, highly critical person when it comes to films. So when I was watching this movie,
I'm very generous with them, by the way.
yeah, a lot more so than I am, which is weird because you line on the critics anyway. So I had these two voices in my head the whole time, and I've told the story to anybody that listens to what my experience with Star Wars. I had the Star Wars fan on one side and the movie critic on the other side, and they just were bickering the whole movie. They were just like at it. And I was just sitting there like, shut up. I'm trying to enjoy this movie. I just want to watch this. But like neither one of them would shut up. So at the end, I was just confused. I was like, I don't know what I just watched. It was so bizarre because it messes with you on so many different levels. So I sent you a text, and I think it was just a long ellipses. And you're like, what happened? I was like, I don't know what happened.
You contextualize it that it was Star Wars at first, and so I thought,
Right.
Are you like injured?
Right.
Like, I almost called you or something, and then you explained, you're like, no, I just saw Star Wars, and it almost sounded bad, like you're like, I just saw it, okay? And I was like, is this like what's the emotion here? What's happened?
How did it go?
I've never seen a reaction of a movie that just devastated you so much, that left you just crippled trying to like comprehend all of its majesty.
Yeah. Well, that was the thing with it was that, because I grew up with it, it was a crucial part of my childhood. And so I really loved these films, and I was looking forward to it continuing because Disney has such a reputation of nostalgia, and Star Wars is my nostalgia. So I was like, that should be on paper a perfect pairing. And so I was like, well, yeah. And it's coming out every year, and it's coming out around my birthday. I was like, this is going to be a yearly tradition. We're going to go watch the Star Wars movie. I'm just going to drag a bunch of people with me to go watch Star Wars.
Yeah. That actually maintained for a little bit, too. We did go see new Star Wars movies for a year or two, and then they started to get really, really bad, and it was like too much.
Well, then, and then they changed it. It's no longer being released at that time of year every year. So it just like slowly went downhill. Anyway, so I went and saw it a second time. And I don't know if in the interim you went and saw it, but I remember I saw it twice.
I saw it twice too, actually.
Right. But I remember because I saw it and then I told you about it. And I can't remember, did you see it before I saw it a second time? Or
I think so, but
whatever.
Yeah.
I remember, so the second time I saw it, all three of us were just dead silent. Both those voices, we were all just staring up in shock.
The shoulder angel and the shoulder devil.
Yeah,
just
there's like
in like perfect alignment.
All three of us are like, what is this? So yeah, and then later on I went and saw Rise of Skywalker. A friend of mine, I didn't even want to see it. I was just kind of like, nope.
Yeah, and they had like a free ticket or something, right?
Yeah, she had a free ticket, and she was like, just come see it and we'll laugh. And I was like, I don't even want to. This is sad. I don't want to laugh. This is just garbage. And I went and saw it, and I was just like, I felt tired at the end of that movie. And obviously, we'll get into more of that later. But okay, so your experience with the film
So
after my
yes,
text.
well, so with Star Wars, let me back up a little bit. So I mean, I've always liked the original trilogy. Big fan as a kid. I mean, it's every kid's like
Sure.
fantasy. I think it's very easy to appeal to like teens and stuff. But and like the prequels, the first one I actually saw in the theater was Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
I saw that with my sisters. We had a really great time, especially because people came to the theater with lightsabers and they lit them up and were swinging
Nice.
them around when
Of course.
Yoda was battling Count Dooku. That was really fun. I was too young at the time to really suspect that the movies were like the prequels were bad, so I just kind of took them for what they were. I didn't think too hard about it. I
Sure.
just thought, oh, okay, these are fun, cool
Right.
Star Wars stuff.
There's
and I
also
did-
enough substance for you to be able to look past anything
Yeah.
you might have disliked. So,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, exactly. And nowadays I think the prequels are pretty much trash, but there are a few things about them that I will hold in like decent regard, and they were things that have always attracted me to about the films. I like the world building, I like the emphasis on politics. I know everybody hates that, and that's not what they want from their Star Wars movie, but it's just kind of like I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff in a general sense, so I think it was very easy for me to be interested in it, even if it didn't have a great sense of direction. And then as far as like my, growing up and where do those movies lie, the original trilogy I still talk about decently often, especially if I'm teaching a class, if it's like a film class or something on writing. Then sometimes Star Wars is a good reference point. A New Hope is a very easy film to talk about because it just does the hero structure so well. It's like the best thing to study if you just want to learn the hero's journey methodology. So
Right.
so I respect the original trilogy, and the prequels were just like meh, they're okay. And then I saw Force Awakens, and it was like a Marvel movie basically to me, and so I felt like there were a number of things where I was like, you can't do that. That doesn't work now for basically everything, and I'm sure we'll talk about those reasons at some point. But yeah, I sort of like made peace in that moment when that movie ended. I was like, all right, that was not that great. It was okay. I get why people like it though, because it is like, it's at least fun, it's exciting, and it's like going back to some sense of Star Wars roots, at least more so than what the prequels were doing.
Right.
So I kind of accepted it on that level. I was like, all right, Star Wars is just fun popcorn movies, turn your brain off, and it's just, they're going to be self-contained, relatively benign movies to see. And then I saw Last Jedi and was like, whoa, that was out of left field. I did not see that coming. In fact, I don't even remember the first time I saw it. I just remember the second time I saw it with my sister. We were bored and she didn't want to see it. And I said, well, it'll be interesting. I was like, I really want to hear your reaction to it because it's a weird movie and it makes a lot of strange decisions. So I took her to see it. And for the most of the theater, I was just like, looking at her and just watching her reactions to things, and like her just watching the movie passively and then going like she did it like 8 times throughout the film.
Subtle.
It was so funny.
Just to disgust.
Yeah, just like what? Yeah, so that was just a nightmare. It's this really malicious it's like has a bad heart, that movie. It's really nasty.
Yep.
And then Rise of Skywalker I just saw, and that's just a train wreck that we can talk to in a minute. So you want me to focus on Rise? You want me to focus on Last Jedi, right? And you want me to explain why the critics like it? Is that what I have to do?
Yeah.
Or did I miss something?
So yeah. So here's the. Oh wait, I'm going to over here. All right. Yeah, I don't even know if this is a question worth asking. So when I saw, so I'm familiar a little bit with Rian Johnson. I saw Looper, and I thought, because you and I talked about this at length, actually, beforehand.
Yeah, we speculated about this movie a lot.
We saw Force
I like
Awakens.
Looper too, actually.
Yeah,
I thought that was
it's
a
not
good
bad.
movie.
It's a passable film.
Yeah.
Despite its failings of time travel garbage.
I thought it was a very weird choice for a Star Wars movie, him as a director, Rian Johnson,
Right.
based on that movie, because it was so like mundane and straightforward. There was no like flair. Like Abrams is very flashy,
Right.
And so I got why they wanted him for Star Wars, but then
And he
they're
had
like,
done
let's
that
do
Star
this.
Trek film, which was much more of a Star Wars
Right,
vein.
that already was like a Star Wars film in many ways.
Right.
So yeah, there was like a clear understanding of how they got there. But with this guy, I was like, why. Like his other movie was Brick, and that was crap. So I didn't
you're
understand.
telling me, yeah, that looks like it's just a garbage film.
Yeah, it makes I don't know. So many people critics love his movies. They love all his movies. I don't know why. I don't really like any of them except for Looper was okay.
Looper
Yeah.
has an interesting premise in like a very basic way. Because
Yeah.
it is, I mean, it's technically a sci-fi
You're interesting,
film,
but not.
right? It's so limited. It limits itself in so many ways, and so
Yeah.
there's only so much you're ever going to get out of it. You can't watch it again and be like, "Ooh, that was something new that I saw." Like you're going to get everything from one viewing,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to basically understand it. I mean, it probably takes itself a little bit more seriously than it should. But what you and I were trying to, I don't know, read into the film before it came out was that, okay, Force Awakens was kind of a dumb, fun reintroduction to Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it left some ends that need to be expounded upon in a deeper way, right?
Yeah.
And the one thing that it really needed was some depth to the characters. Because
Yeah.
Force Awakens does an okay job of setting up what
and it
could,
needed to stop breaking Star Wars lore.
Right.
It needed to stop doing that
Right.
hardcore.
but it had some cool concepts, like Finn being a stormtrooper and switching over to the Resistance, right?
Yeah,
like
that's fine.
in a bubble, that is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Yeah,
in a vacuum, it's fine.
Rey being nobody or whatever, and then Kylo
That's fine.
having his, fighting his demons and stuff. Like, it does enough to try and sabotage itself as well, like Rey kicking his butt at the end.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's room. And
Mhm.
so when we got to this, we're like, well, he seems like someone who might delve into the characters a little bit more,
Yeah.
and he's going to slow down the movie. I was like, okay, so this could be the way that they resolve all the issues Force Awakens puts in there.
Yeah, we thought it would be more suspense driven. We thought it would be more
Right.
kind of like Rogue One, or the way Rogue One looked to be in the trailers, where it's kind of this.
We'll make a video about that later.
It's a more grounded
Right.
movie. I think that's what we were thinking it would be, and it would
Right.
explain stuff. They would find Luke. We would learn about Jedi lore and
Sure.
things like that. And instead, he was like, "No Jedi lore, just burn everything as a ghost." It's like, now ghosts can interact with the world. Shoot, man, that was worse than the lore breaking stuff you did in Force Awakens. Damn.
Yeah. So, well, then I guess on that, why do you think critics like this movie? Let's ask the age-old question.
This is a hard one for me to answer. This is one of the toughest ones to answer. I don't know why they like this movie. It's a bad movie. I mean, they're probably bought off by Disney. I gotta say, like, this if there was a case for a movie that they were bought off, this would be it. I mean, but I don't know. That's a pretty big low. Like, I wouldn't give this movie a good score even for money. I don't think I would feel like morally wrong about myself if I did that. No, but like in all
Burn my character.
yeah, basically.
Well, but okay, so 91.
It's so high.
Let's
so
eliminate
bad.
that for a minute. What would you, if you were a critic watching this film,
Yeah.
what would you have given this? Pure,
Okay.
unbiased. Like, if you're trying to make sure that you're catering not only to your own opinions but to an objective standard that people would
Right.
be looking at, what do you think you would hand this?
I would give it. Yeah, I would give it 1 out of 5 stars. So that would be like 10%, I guess, or
Okay.
20%, something like that. Because
So you think giving that 40% on the audience side is too high?
yeah, even the audiences are too generous. It's a bad movie. It's horrible. It's so horrible. I mean, there's pretty much nothing salvageable about it. I hate to say that, but it's just there. Okay, so I will say there's a few ideas that are introduced that are relatively interesting and that could potentially work.
Sure.
The idea of like, the choice that Kylo offers Rey at the end.
Right.
That's interesting. The fact that like, oh, it's just good and evil fighting each other, but really like there's like a third path we have to look at. Like, okay, that's potentially interesting. Doesn't work in a hero's journey format very well, but
Right.
sure, let's go there. Let's do
Well-
something new, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some credence to some of that, but it's just like a really mean-spirited, disrespectful movie, and so it's very hard to get past that, and it's just also not well structured.
Right.
Like the logic it uses, where like Finn, not Finn, Poe is who I'm thinking of. Poe is this like, oh, he's a hot-headed pilot, and then he disobeys Holdo for no reason. It's like, what is she? Like some kind of Nazi general, or just follow my orders or else? But she's the good guy.
Right.
It's like there's weirdly conflicting messaging like that in the movie, like you should just follow your superiors even when they're completely moronic.
Which we assumed was like a meta message that Ryan was sending out to the audience, like, just trust me, just like the movie because it's a Star Wars movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in here that
Right.
does not make sense. And
Well, it comes across as so pretentious. I remember you making that point last time. It's like,
yeah,
this is mine to do with as I please. And we're coming into it like, no, we're coming to see a Star Wars movie. And instead he wants to make some kind of artistic statement that is like, this is not your place. This is a good stepping stool. Like, this is something you should have done, respected the audience, respected the IP, and then use that to gain notoriety to then make your artist statement with your own piece. And instead he's like, well, this is my only chance. I'm going to make this statement.
Mm-hmm.
But the statement he made was, I'm going to burn it all to the ground. And it's like,
because I can, I guess.
Why did we want to burn it to the ground? Like, what do you hate about Star Wars or its fans? Because that's really what it felt like.
Yeah.
That's why I was so in shock the second time I saw it, was that I was just watching this movie. Like, it felt like the movie kept telling me that I was stupid for watching it. And look,
it
it's
makes
a movie.
fun of your passion for Star Wars.
Right.
And mind you, I'm not really a fan. I appreciate the original trilogy, and that's about as far as it goes. There's like some things I appreciate. I don't hate Star Wars, but I'm not like this ardent fan. I've not read the books. I played like one or two of the games like here or there, but they're not like on my top priority list. They're not like favorites of mine. So like even for me, I was watching the film and going, "Ooh, that's an insult. What was that about? Is there a purpose to this?" Like when he throws the lightsaber, it was rough. Like in the theater, you heard one person make this like like, and then that was it, and it was super loud because nobody else reacted. Nothing, and it was a full theater, packed, IMAX and everything. No reaction. It was like, whoa, like.
That's uncomfortable. Yeah, I think that was one of my first indicators because Force Awakens.
That is the first one for sure. Yeah, it's just this like, oh.
Well, not that one actually. It was before that. So when you're using a visual medium, especially in Star Wars from the beginning has done a lot of visual storytelling as well as following the plot. It's very symbolic in a lot of its ways. Like specifically, you look at Luke. He switches colors throughout the films, and it's like an indication of his maturity as he goes on.
White to gray to black, so it's like his descent into like the complicated, morality of the things going on. Yeah,
or what he's fighting, or whatever. You can read into it or however you want. Yeah. And then when he fights Vader in the cave, and like it's got a lot of these visual portions to kind of help you think. It's a little bit deeper than just watching the movie for the movie's sake, right? It's allowing for further questions to be asked while you're sitting there. And so on some level it caters to the people who want a little bit more of a deeper experience. This one, from the beginning, it starts incorrectly, is because you have Poe going out there and fighting this dreadnought thing. And so it's telling you on a visual level, the little guy is going against the big guy.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So I read specifically I read the trilogy by Timothy Zahn, which I highly recommend, by the way. And it talks about this enemy that comes out of the shadows essentially after the Empire falls, and his name is Admiral Thrawn. Not the Admiral Thrawn that Dave Filoni ruined. The Admiral Thrawn, the original. He is an intelligent officer that his philosophy is know thy enemy. And so what he does is he has a small force, but he keeps them clumped together. So he comes in, he hits hard with everything he's got, and then he disappears. He doesn't sit around and fight. He just wants to weaken them and make them feel like there's an elusive enemy out there somewhere that they cannot catch, they can't find, and he's too brilliant for them when they do catch him. And so it's another hardship for Luke because he's out there alone trying to do it while Han and Leia are trying to establish the Republic. So the Republic is being established as the Empire has fallen. And this one follows along similar lines. Like it tries to acknowledge that fact. And Force Awakens does it too, but it's never clear. Like, I don't know if you guys knew this, but the planets that Starkiller Base destroyed, they're all the New Republic. We're all like the bigwigs are. So he essentially wipes out the Republic when he does that.
Oh, in Force Awakens?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Nobody did because it doesn't explain anything. It's like a one line, like, oh, they wiped out this planet and it had the Republic on it. And so it's like the Senate
Oh
seat,
my
essentially.
gosh.
It's like the equivalent of like Coruscant or something.
Yeah, because what I got from that moment was just like
It can blow up a
he's
bunch of
like,
planets.
remember how in the original Star Wars we had a Death Star that could blow up one planet?
Yeah.
I have one that could blow up 5. And it was like,
right. And that's a
okay.
problem with Abrams, because Abrams has set himself up that all that he needs to do is make it bigger and badder and more
Yes,
explosive.
bigger is always better.
So that's what you're looking at rather than what the consequence of the story is, because he rarely puts consequence on the story himself. And so that is a problem that he set up himself. When you get to Last Jedi, they do something where visually it's making you think, okay, it's almost like looking at the Empire and the Rebellion again, because this dreadnought's this giant thing, posed this single man in a X-Wing, when in reality it's reversed, because the entire galaxy is set up as their republic, and so the First Order is essentially the rebellion. It's because it's reversed, right?
Okay, sure.
But they name things like this is the Resistance and these are the First Order, and so even the names are like really confusing. That's why it's so confusing
you're
and hard
the
to
dominant
remember.
Force, but
Right.
you're the Resistance.
Yeah, how does that make any sense? Like you have to abide by the rules of the films that led to this point of the source material. You have films, you have 6 films really, but the 3 films that you're following are the original trilogy, and this is what they set up. Whether you like it or not, that's what they set up. You got to follow it.
Yeah.
And so they just skip a bunch of steps and you just accept it. And it's like, I would actually appreciate if the First Order was acting more like a rebellion rather than this big force that the little guy has to, because then at least it's like a dichotomy at that point, right? Because now we're not getting the same stuff. We're getting something a little bit newer and different. But also, it's a different source of tension, which is what the books did. Because Thrawn was using a bunch of different elements.
You mean you wanted something like different and unique?
Yeah, I know. Go figure, right? So I'll just admit it now, I guess. I'm a toxic man-child Star Wars fan that is like nothing that
you
Disney
don't
has done.
understand Rian Johnson's genius. Right. That's your problem.
And this is the critique that keeps getting thrown at people like me, is that oh, you want something different, and then we did something different, and you just say, oh, I hate it. Like, no. I'm following the rules that were already established. You're the one that's saying, nah, screw all the rules. This is what you get. And it's like, I don't like this at all.
Well, but even in that, so like, it's not. So I don't care so much about those details. Like,
sure.
I get why you do, and I respect that, and I do think that they're important. But like for me, it's just I'm just looking for like, can you tell your story effectively?
Sure.
And the problem is when they change a rule, it's like, okay, wait a minute. So now I don't know what to believe anymore because now the rule's different. So now I just don't know if there's going to be consequences for anything or not.
Or
so
what the consequences look like.
Right. So like, for example, when, Yoda comes back as a Force ghost and like zaps the books and burns them, it's like, okay, so Yoda actually doesn't care about like the history of his whole life's work. That's totally irrelevant to him. So it's like, I guess like nobody cares about their past. I mean, Luke doesn't care about his past. Yoda doesn't care about his past. I guess our past doesn't matter. And that's just like a really hard message to try to understand. Like, I get that it's reinforced with Kylo Ren. He's just like, forget the past. It's gone now.
Right.
And
but it makes sense coming from him. It did not make sense coming from the other characters.
Like, so he had a justifiable reason to get there. It's just he had other characters say that too. And it was like, well, how does that make sense with them given the context of what I already know? And like now, so it's like, okay, so now Force Ghosts can just go out and do all sorts of stuff. I mean, why doesn't any Force Ghost just show up and solve any problem the moment it arises? It seems like, I mean, Yoda could do that. Yoda could be like greater than Gandhi. I mean, he could just like appear, solve problem, disappear, go elsewhere, solve new problem. He could just be doing that incessantly every movie now. So it's like the fact that they did that, I'm like, oh shoot, like I can't keep anything straight now. Like none of it's going to make any sense. And this becomes a much worse problem in the Rise of Skywalker film where they just do it even more. And they're like, oh yeah, we're all still here supporting you. And it's like, what? So
that's a derivative of a line that Obi-Wan says in the first film. It's like, if you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you possibly can imagine.
Sure.
The problem with that is that he fundamentally misunderstands what that line means. To him, it's like, oh, well, now he's just invincible. Because that's essentially what that means, right? When Yoda comes in and uses the Force lightning or whatever to burn the tree.
Yeah, he's just invincible.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like
he's impervious
he's
to
the
damage.
same
He
exact,
can't die now.
Yeah, he's the same exact character that can do
Right.
whatever he wants. He just can't be hit by like a lightsaber or whatever.
Right.
And it makes you question, and that's one of the things I disliked about this movie so much, and why I think it has no artistic merit, especially in either way, like as a standalone movie or within the Star Wars universe, is because it disregards everything. Not only does it disregard, it totally contradicts everything that built it. Like it's standing on a foundation that it's actively trying to chop out from underneath itself. And so that's why, because when you see Yoda do that, you automatically, well, some of us automatically we go like, wait, if he can do that, why doesn't he just go fight
Right.
Snoke or whatever?
Right.
Like, why didn't Obi-Wan in Empire go with Luke?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
why couldn't
Right,
he
right,
go
right.
and fight Vader in his like corporeal form or whatever? It was weird
Yeah.
to like try and square that, and that's the thing, is that it's done in such a flagrant manner. It's just kind of like thrown in there. He's like, wouldn't it be cool if this? And he doesn't think of what that would mean. He just is like, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
put it in there because of the symbolism that I like in it. And that's what you were saying last time about like he's thinking he's making this artistic statement by doing this stuff. And in reality, it's like, dude, you have to play by the rules, man. You can't just come in and start playing baseball on a soccer field and get mad at everybody else that wants to play soccer.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
Well, so here's the thing. Like, I agree with you in that you need to, if you're working in someone else's universe, it's not your property, it's not your
Right.
idea, so you do need to follow the rules of that universe. But he doesn't even just disrespect that; he just disrespects like storytelling in general, and that's more of where I have an issue with it
Sure.
because now it's like it
'Cause it's not
hurts
so
his
specific,
credibility
yeah.
to actually say something artistic. Because he's like, well, I'm just going to disregard it because you're expecting it. It's like, so what is this? The artistry of the troll? Like, this doesn't really have and it's fine to do like because Abrams, I think, on some level is like, well, let's just reset Star Wars with Force Awakens.
Sure.
I mean, it's basically the same story as New Hope. And so he's
In a
sort of
soulless
like,
way, yeah.
yeah. So he's already kind of done what Rian Johnson wants. Is he said, I've already gotten rid of this stuff. I've kept the things that I like and my imagination of it, and then everything else is out the window.
Right.
So now let you do something crazy like with it. And then he's like, well, what if Star Wars isn't a story but an idea? And it's like, okay, then make that idea compelling. And I guess like because I actually do know people who like this movie, and my challenge to them is, do you like this movie, or do you just like appreciate the thought behind making Star Wars challenge a lot of our assumptions about certain ideas, like the whole like, oh, instead of it being good versus evil, now there's like a moral third ground to take, and we got to get away from the past. And some of these ideas, that is interesting. I agree with you. I don't think anybody disagrees that that isn't interesting in its own right. The problem is like he hasn't conveyed it well, and he hasn't like properly set up like an arc for that to happen. Like you said, it makes sense for Kylo Ren to do that. It's like, well, then just like establish a character arc for him to go through that and explain it to us, and leave everybody else out of it. Throwing Luke into that mix is just a mess. And it's not just a mess because, it's his own vision that he wants to get across. It's also a mess because it doesn't even work for the people on set. Like Mark Hamill vehemently despised what he had to do to make that character to quote unquote work for Rian Johnson. And this is not just like films are not a creation of one person. It's not like one individual artist gets like total, say on everything in the project. That's not how it works. You actually have to work with people. And generally speaking, yes, you do need to inform your actors and tell them you're playing this character. It's like this or that. But when you like push an actor, especially someone like Mark Hamill, who really cares about the characters he plays,
Right.
and like thinks very hard and deeply about them, I mean, I think that's apparent in all of his work.
Yeah.
When you tell him, when he's to the point where he's like, I guess he's just Jake Skywalker now because it means nothing to me of what's come before, then it's like, dude, it just seems like you're not really paying any respect to like even like other artists at the table who do have a thought of like what would make an effective story. And I feel like this is like the proof in the pudding with the audiences. Although my challenge to you is can you explain the audience scores of 41%? That seems mighty generous. Why isn't it lower?
There are theories that a lot of scores were getting deleted and that they weren't being properly averaged.
Yeah.
I think
Well, just like the
weren't-
being bought off by Disney, it's similar kind of thing.
No. Audience-wise, they were like not counting one
I just
stars
mean conspiracy on both sides
yeah,
because
yeah.
it's such a polarizing film.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've talked to a couple people that have said they appreciate this film, but when I've delved further, I can remember two specifically. They both said the same thing. They said, "Oh, I like the thought that it doesn't have to be someone special, right? It can be anybody or whatever. I like the thought that he's kind of burning down previous ideas and setting up new ones." And
Yeah.
and to that I say, no. So here's the problem with all that, and the reason that we do this series, the Rotten Disparities thing is definitely, it's an interesting concept, but it's an open door into kind of giving these things either artistic merit or breaking apart why they don't have any.
Yeah.
So this one, they intentionally went with, okay, we're gonna make 7, 8, and 9, and we're gonna make it part of the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
And if you understand anything about what makes Star Wars, George Lucas is multiple times has said this is a family soap opera, right?
Yeah.
This is a space opera for sure, but this is about the Skywalkers and the Palpatines specifically. And so when you want to continue that saga and then you want to drag it away from the Skywalkers, it's like, well, what purpose is, like, why do you do that? What purpose is there to do this? And so the way that, and he doesn't even respect his own storytelling methods.
Right.
And that's why I think it's so jarring on so many levels. The primary example I can think of is the scene where Finn wants to sacrifice himself, right?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. The whole movie, you're just trying to figure out, what am I supposed to get out of this, right? Because typically a story will have a through line. It has an overarching message, even though there's a bunch of stuff scattered throughout. It has a thesis, as you call it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the theme that follows through the whole film. This one is so contradictory on every level constantly that it's exhausting. And so on fundamental level, when you're watching that scene, these speeders go out to meet these walkers that are totally not derivative of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
They go
snow. I mean salt.
Right.
Planet.
It's
not
salt.
snow.
Yeah. Yeah, that part too. Like it's like he doesn't have enough confidence in himself for us to just be like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's
Sure.
on a snow planet. It's like, no. It's not snow. It's salt. And the way that he does it is some guy like picks it up and puts it in his mouth. He's like, salt. I'm like, who does that? Who
eats some dirt? I'll eat some dirt.
Yeah, put some dirt in your mouth and you're like, what is this? It was so bizarre. It felt like he stopped the movie and he wanted to tell us himself. He's like, hey, everybody.
Yeah.
This is not Hoth. It's like, thanks. Oh, cool, thanks.
As if like we
We go
weren't
back
going to
to
be
the-
thinking of Hoth with
Right.
the fact that it's all covered in white. And his attitude is sort of like, well, I can use a snow-looking planet if I want to. It's like, yeah, you can. Or he's like, oh, you want that? You want that? F you. You don't get that.
It's
salt.
salt.
So it's different
Boom.
now. And it's like, well, it's
Got
not
him.
different. It's still white.
It's
a white
like,
powder. There's
right.
nothing different about it, really. And it's like just the fact that like you're thinking about it, that it's different. I mean, how does that translate to me as an audience member? I mean, what
Right.
does that matter?
Yeah, and so it's little stuff like that, and then big stuff like when Finn goes out, they're in speeders and they don't have any combat capabilities, so they
Yeah.
can't shoot, they can't do anything. They're just flying out there to their deaths.
Mm-hmm.
So they established already that these blast doors are out and they can't get through them except with this giant gun that they have at the end. So as they're flying out there, the gun's not even set up yet. So they're just going out to get shot down. And so at that point, you're just like, well, what are we doing here? Why are we just wasting lives? These people are just dying for no reason. And then they bring out the big gun, which is this Death Star technology, which they cannot get away from in all of these films. All three of these movies are just like, we cannot let it go. We have to have Death Star stuff. So he goes out and Finn's like, all right, I'm going to do the one thing
That actually makes
that
sense.
might help.
Right.
I'm going to drive into that thing and blow it up, and then they won't be able to get through the blast doors. It's
Right.
like, all right. So you get
you
character
start to get
development.
invested because you're like, oh man, he's going to sacrifice himself.
Right.
Holy cow.
He's going to save everybody. Cool.
Right.
and then Rose comes and bam, right out there.
Yeah.
So not only does she take away the one moment that could save all their friends, but then she says this line, and she goes, "What? That's how we win. Not killing what we hate, but saving what we love, or some shit." So she says that, and you're sitting there like,
but it's like a shot as the beam is destroying the gate, and they're like making out, and so you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's the thing. On screen, he's showing their friends dying behind them as she's saying, "We're saving what we love." I was like,
yeah, so the message is totally incongruent with what's happening visually.
Completely contradictory.
So so here's the thing. Like he's obviously doing this on purpose. This is not a mistake.
Sure.
This is like him wanting us to look at it this way.
But he is also saying that this is an arc from Rose, because her sister dies in the beginning. Well, she's like dropping bombs on this
by making a sacrifice,
right?
Yeah.
By and then she sacrifices herself.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like it's trying to complete an arc.
Yeah.
But then at the end, it's like, no, both those arcs suck. Forget them both.
Yeah. So this is the problem with that. He sets it up and he's like, well, see, it does match her character, and I'm like, no. You want to be antithetical,
right?
So that's the argument you should lean on and explain. And instead, he's like, it does follow storytelling conventions. It's like, not anymore. Like, with the broader context of the narrative, this does not add up, and you know that. You know enough about storytelling to see that. So you are making an intentional decision to subvert that, which, even if we were to acknowledge and say is fine, what I want to hear is like, what is the purpose of this? Like, what grander good thing did you bring to the world by presenting this message of like you see what I'm saying? Like, if he had done a movie like, let's say that like Rebel Moon movie or whatever that you hate, like let's suppose he made that, and it's just like it's like a Star Wars rip-off movie. Kind of like Spaceballs, right? Like, if he'd done something like that.
I like Spaceballs.
Right.
I do not like Rebel Moon.
Right, but let's say it's not to make fun of it. It's just to like talk about his like, deep artistic thoughts. I'm all for that. I think that's interesting. I'm like, okay, sure. It's a comment on Star Wars and the kind of narratives that Star Wars tells, and you're going to criticize them.
But outside of Star Wars,
you can't do it within Star Wars,
right? Because
if you do that, your reception will just be horrible, which is basically what he got. I mean, the amount of backlash he got for this movie was just astronomical because it didn't please anybody. The thing with Force Awakens is even people. It pleased a lot of people who are just kind of like, Star Wars is fun, and that's all they really cared about. They just wanted to see Han Solo. They wanted to see lightsaber fights. They wanted to see space battles. And they got that. They got that in that movie. There's like a little bit of sprinkled ideas splintered throughout. It's enough to keep you going, and that's it. Not a great movie, but also like satisfactory to the audience.
Right.
The problem with Last Jedi is it doesn't please anyone. It doesn't please just casual movie fans.
Intentionally, though. That's the problem.
Intentionally, and deliberately sabotages this. And no one's able to like really pick up on the message in a nice, clear way. There have been like a few people that will like rise to its defense, but even when this happens, there's just like, it's like I'm having trouble just remembering their arguments. I have to go back and revisit them.
Well, I remember it. Okay, so it's almost like you get on like this tour, and you're climbing up a mountain, and the tour guide keeps shoving people off the mountain. But you can't get off because you're like, well, I need the tour guide, so I guess we're just going to risk it and hope I'm the one that survives. But he ends up pushing everybody off the mountain. That's what it feels like at the end of the movie. You've just got shoved off. You just didn't know when your time was going to come. Because you're going to get offended at something. You just don't know what. But he intentionally is like, it's like he had a bunch of people come test screen every time he did a scene to see what they were expecting, what they liked.
Anytime they liked something, he went back and rewrote that.
Get that out.
Yeah, it does feel that way because it's every single instance. And what it ends up doing is creating an absolute disaster for a follow-up movie. Now, he probably could have done a third entry, and it would have made sense in his own mind. But I
wonder if that would have made sense to anyone else. But.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear that. But instead, of course, because the backlash is so bad, Disney's like, well, this is a bad idea. Get out of here. And so they shoo him out, and then they first pull in Colin Trevorrow, and he has some ideas, and they don't like his ideas, so they say, "Get out of here."
Well,
They're
I think
probably
it was
right, to be honest.
I think it was yeah. Well, I think Colin Trevorrow was also upset at what had been going on with the first two films because he was probably sitting over there like, "What am I supposed to do with this? What do you guys want me to do?"
Yeah,
And
probably.
I mean, because it sounded like they had creative differences. You have to
Right.
be creative to have those kind of differences. But he was looking at that stuff and being like, I don't agree with anything you guys are doing here.
Yeah.
Can you give me something that I can work with in the third movie? And they're like, this is what you get. Deal with it. And he's like, I can't do anything with this.
Right.
And they're like, you're fired. Get out.
Mm-hmm.
So instead we got Abrams, and we'll jump into
Yeah.
that in a second. But yeah, I think all in all, the artistic merit of this film is so lacking because it intentionally tries not to have artistic merit. And in not
And
having
that's the
artistic merit, it thinks that it has artistic merit. And that's the problem with it, is like, no, man, you fundamentally misunderstand what artistic merit means within a film. We're going, especially in Star Wars, because it's
Well, I don't think he did. I would push back on that. I don't think he doesn't understand it. I think it's just coming from a place of total self-absorption. This is my project.
Fair.
I wrote the story. You're going to do what I say.
Mm.
This is the meaning of the story. That's what I said it is. So therefore, that's what it is. And regardless of any audience,
He's just a belligerent child. He's just
pretty much, yeah. Because it's like he's just like, it doesn't matter that this is George Lucas's idea. It's my idea now. It doesn't matter what the audiences think. I made it. I decide what it is. And so it's this total, like, he puts a crown on his head and just dictates what everything is supposed to be. Mark
And he
Hamill,
does
you're
that-
wrong. You're wrong. He's not Jake. He's Luke, as I interpret him. You now represent what's happening here, okay? You do that. And it's like it's total totalitarianism, basically.
he's just a dictator on
pretty
set.
much. Well, I mean, like,
But he's a dictator only in the fact that he's like, what do you want? And they're like, well, this. And he's like, no, give him the opposite. It's like,
Yeah,
he
pretty
wants
much.
bread, you're going to get rocks. You're going to get rocks, and you're going to eat them, and you're going to like it. And that's what it felt like at the end,
Yeah,
too, because
yeah.
he kept in interviews, and they're like, well, after the backlash, is there anything you would change? He's like,
Yeah.
no. And it sounds like that. He sounds so whiny, like it's like he's upset that anyone dare suggest that. And I don't like to be too meta with this because I do want to just evaluate the film on the film's basis, but it really feels like he does this on purpose.
yeah,
And so you almost have to address it. It's like, dude, what were you doing?
yeah.
And I think I'd even heard a theory going around, I'm pretty sure it's true, was that he was having people watch YouTube videos
Mhm.
about what they thought was coming in The Last Jedi, what they thought,
yeah.
The Force Awakens had set up. And so he was intentionally like having it watched and being like, okay, now I know what not to do.
Yeah.
And then that's why you get that, what it exists, because it's just like the most bland thing because all the theories were actually interesting
Right.
and they could have saved a lot of this stuff. And I remember there was two things that I thought could have absolutely saved the film. Like the Finn thing was interesting, but I don't think it would have saved it. I think it would have just
Sure.
been an interesting moment in that arc. One was I thought that Rey should have joined Kylo, because then at least it would have been subversive because she had been such a
Yeah.
perfect character that making a decision that seems kind of morally gray
Uh-huh.
would have leaned into his themes first off, but also would have been like, all right, I'd be interested to see where you're going with this. So I would have watched the third movie just in hopes that they did something with that idea.
Well, that's because that would be he's committed to the idea.
Right.
But he's not committed to the idea.
He's not committed to any ideas.
That's the
yeah.
whole thing. Is
Right.
he's like, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna make it different than what you expect. But that is the point, and the point stops there. It goes no further than that.
Right.
It's just to so it's very
Yeah, it's
like
almost like starting a run and stopping before you get warmed up, and then you go back to the starting line and you start running again.
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's what it feels like. You're constantly doing. It's like a long road with a lot of stoplights, and that's the movie. You're just like,
Right.
dude, can I just get a flow of some kind? Like I'm just like
Yeah.
the whole thing. So
Yeah.
the other thing was I was just kind of at the point where I was like, this guy feels like he's just gonna explode everything in the end. And I remember texting you that too. I was like, this would only be great if Jar Jar comes back as a Sith Lord at this point. If he just comes and wipes everybody out, he's going along these lines anyway. He's like, I hate everything about what you guys think this movie is going to be.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to have this thing come in. But I think that he knew that fans would appreciate that. Mostly because of the torment that he'd put him through a whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then to see this thing, we probably all would have cheered. With like, yeah, right on. Jar Jar's finally our hero. Like, finally.
I don't know about that.
Darth Banks.
Well, because here's, I mean, you make a good point. I think in hindsight, that would go over well eventually. It would become like a
Right.
cult classic because
Right.
people would be like, yeah, this is just hilarious. And part of me wonders if maybe that's what he wanted with this movie, but I really don't think this will become a cult classic. I mean, it's
No.
been almost, I mean, what has
It
it been,
aged-
7 years or
yeah.
something like that? That's I mean, it's not, he's still got a little bit of wiggle room in there for it to become a cult classic, but not a lot. He's burning on fumes at this point. Because, you know, he
Well,
has
cult
this,
classics have to have substance, right? They have an essence of soul in them.
yeah.
And a lot of times it's not like that movie that I like, the house one. It's like, it's so bad. It's a horrible, horrible movie.
Yeah, it's really bad.
But it has these moments in it, and you can tell
They're
like
actually very good.
they're great.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and it's like this horror comedy movie from the 80s. And like it has these moments that are just, they stand out so much. And I don't know if it's just because the rest of the movie's bad, but you can tell that everyone's working on it.
Mhm.
Looked like they were having a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Because everything, it's like practical effects, and the house is haunted with all these different characters. And then it does have like a storyline and a character arc that makes sense. It's not the strongest in the world, but for
Yeah,
what
it's
it is,
there.
it's good.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you watch it and you're like, all right, I know I'm going to get this out of it, right? And that could be different from different people, but like, that that's in there. With Last Jedi, the point of the film was that is not in there constantly.
Right.
He's like, every time that one thing gets built, he's going to rip it out and throw it away. But that's what it feels like. And it's like, well, on that, you can't have artistic merit because now it is not making any kind of artistic point. There's no art to it. The art is tearing down the art. And I understand.
The art is tearing down the
I
art.
understand the
meta
screw the system or whatever. And I don't like that message because it's antithetical to what I'm trying to enjoy here.
Right.
It's antithetical to art. You
Well-
can't be antithetical to art and call it art. That's not I understand.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, I would push back against that. I think you can, on some ways, be antithetical to art and also be art. I just think that
you can reimagine it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you shouldn't do it with Star Wars.
Sure.
And if you're gonna do it with Star Wars, so here's the thing. I feel like I actually understand Rian Johnson pretty well. I feel like I could just pick his brain and control him. To be perfectly honest with you,
I wish you would. Let's go make another movie.
it just so here's the thing. In a lot of my artist practice, I'm a troll. I love being a troll. I
Sure.
love that in my work. There's this tongue-in-cheek relationship with what you anticipate happening, and then I use it in a different way. And I give you some clues to get there, but that's it. You got to pick up on the clues. And you probably won't because you're not expecting the story to go in the direction that it does. And so you just kind of dismiss the clues, and then it gets there and you go, oh, I wasn't expecting this at all. And then you go back and you're like, oh, the clues were there. But the difference is that I have a point to make. And you could disagree with my point, but
Sure.
everything is being reinforced by this is the message. And I want you to get that message. And so in order for that message to work, I have to dismantle a number of things that you're expecting to happen. So I understand that logic. The problem is, like I said, though, his thesis doesn't come together at the end of the movie.
Right.
And there's no guarantee for an additional movie. So you have to just make sure that the message comes through. And maybe some scholar will look at it, some YouTube fan, and he'll be like, you know what, this movie is deeper than we all missed it, and then really unpack it and how all of this adds up. And that's fine and dandy. I just doubt it. And I also feel like it
Not
shouldn't
gonna
be
happen.
that hard. If something if a work is really contentious for people and it creates interesting dialogue, that's good. But I don't think it works that just some people are like, oh, well, you're just wrong, and everybody's totally disillusioned about what the argument is actually about. A movie I don't know, something where someone you disagree with somebody on, and then you start to explain the movie to them, and they go, "Oh, I never thought about it that way."
Sure.
That's the reaction you want. That's the kind of dialogue you need to have happen,
Right.
and that's not
But
happened with this movie
that's
at all.
indicative of artistic merit, though, is my point. Is because it has themes in there that you can interpret differently. There are different people can interpret differently.
Yeah,
This one, the ones that like it or that interpret it they just say that same thing, that, oh, he burned down my expectations. He burned down the expectations that are built within a story.
it's like a one-note argument.
Yeah, but that's all they ever say. I've never heard an argument that's given me something to be like, okay, I can appreciate that.
I saw one that I remember was trying to justify. They're like, oh, it does follow story conventions because of like these reasons, and it's like just because it's in there doesn't mean it resonates.
Right.
And like it's like very loosely in there, but again, it's like that offhanded comment, like, oh, that was the Republic that they blew up. It's like you can't just passively mention that.
Right.
That's such a big deal. That's huge. That's like if a main character died in the film, like, oh, they're dead now. Oh, are they? Really? Like, whoa.
Yeah, when did that
how
happen?
come I didn't get to see that? That seems pretty freaking important.
Yeah, why don't I know about this?
Yeah. Why don't I know?
I wanted to be privy to that. That's why I'm watching the movie, so I can learn stuff like that. Yeah, and The Force Awakens does have that problem too. Because it does like traditional. It has the plot points with no plot, is the point.
Yeah, basically.
And
but I mean, again, it's just sort of like people band together, fight against opposition,
right.
When Rey is on a journey of self-discovery, Finn is on a journey of self-respect. You know, there's like a few things in there that you could kind of
They're like, oh, I remember that
out
from other better things.
Yeah.
That's the problem, is it keeps harkening back to that too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've harped enough on Last Jedi.
Yeah, I'm so done talking about that movie.
Agreed. And I don't think this is going to be long either, because, dear God, that was rough last night. So I introduced him to Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
Initial thoughts?
Well, let's bring up the disparity score. As I said before, and I still stand by this, it's a bad movie. It's really, really bad. So the critics give this... No, that's Force Awakens. You got the wrong one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was like, what?
How did that happen?
Okay, so critics 51%, audience is 86. So this is the one where now you're going to have to justify yourself.
I'm not justifying
because critics
I'm
made
not
the right
out.
call on this movie. The bad movie.
No, they didn't. That's way too high.
It is still too high. Yeah,
way
it's
too
really
high.
bad. This is just as bad as the other one, basically. Initial impressions. Let's see. Okay, so it has horrible. Yeah, it has horrible pacing, and that becomes a problem that just destroys everything else about the movie, because there's no time to process or absorb anything, and so none of it means anything to you. It's just glossed over and moved on. Like, there's a shot where they fly into this planet. I don't even remember why they were going there. You had to explain it. You're like, oh, because they're going after that key thing. And I was like, oh, that's right. I remember them briefly mentioning that. So you see the planet. It's like some desert planet. You see the ship. And then the next shot is you see them like walking up this ravine. I'm like, oh, I guess we landed and we got off the ship. Okay. And then the next shot, I mean, this is like desert wasteland. Nothing for miles and miles and miles. No water, no food, no trees, no shelter. And they just turn the camera on, and there's this mass of these alien people on a festival.
Right.
And they're all celebrating and stuff. And you're like, in the middle of nowhere. What do these people live underground? Like, what's going on? And so it's just there. And so you go from like traveling in space to traveling in the desert wasteland to now we're suddenly at a festival. I'm just like, holy hell. This was like not even 3 seconds worth of screen time. And we've just like covered so much territory in that space. You're just like, whoa. So that's like a huge issue. I mean, this is J.J. Abrams on steroids.
Yeah.
Because, you know, his movies, it's all about like people running. Nobody can just stand and have a conversation. There's no slow scenes. That doesn't exist. But this is like he just cranked the dial all the way up because he's cramming 3 movies into one. And it's just, it makes for a nightmare. It's very like, it's extremely stimulating. It's just, but like overstimulating. It's just like bam, bam, bam. So those are my impressions. Pace your movie better. If it hurts the pacing, chop it off, get rid of it. You'll have a better movie. I promise. Don't worry about it.
Everyone will be happier. I remember, because I kept looking over at you, and you're just like, where are we now? What's going on? What are we looking for this time? Because there's like 4 or 5 MacGuffins that they go after in this film.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And it's just
gotta get
one
the dagger,
after the other.
We gotta
after
get
the other.
the map, but then we gotta get. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and none of the characters make any sense, and they're just running and arguing, and that was the thing. Yeah, as a last comment, that kind of leads into this from Last Jedi into Rise of Skywalker. Because Force Awakens, slightly guilty of it, but not quite as egregiously. Last Jedi is really when it delves in to the what I call Marvel style humor, and then Rise of Skywalker really just like nails it home.
Mm.
It's just a constant stream of, isn't this funny? Isn't this funny? Look, it's funny. Isn't it funny? They're arguing. It's funny. It's cute and funny. It's funny. The Falcon's on fire. Isn't it funny? And you're just
Yeah.
constantly like, no, it's not funny.
Or like when Rey pulls out her lightsaber to like light the cave that they're in,
Right.
and then Poe comes up with a flashlight and
Flashlight.
turns it on, and then like she walks away, and he's like, "Oh, I got this puny flashlight," and it was just like this innuendo joke that was not funny. It was just like,
Yeah. And not to
you
mention,
want to like,
and they're all in bad spots. Again, same thing that Marvel has. Because the thing about
cut the tension out, just
Right,
get rid of
it
that.
just-
We can't have that.
yeah, just gonna drag you out of the movie, laugh real quick, and then throw you back in, and then you're just like, yeah. Because in the original trilogy, they do have a lot of humor, but it's in situations. That's why they have the droids. They are the quintessential comic relief. And they're just there to like misunderstand, and that's why they're robots, because they don't have the human emotion aspect, and they're like C-3PO is kind of this nihilist that just kind of wanders around with them. It's just it has those moments that are just intrinsically funny without trying to like throw jokes at you and hope that you laugh, because they do the whole like pause thing for you to like the laugh pause or whatever they call it. And the first time I saw it was Poe does the "your mom" joke in the beginning of Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I just remember going, oh no.
Yeah, once that happened, like, you know right away that this movie's gonna fail. You're just like, oh boy, oof.
And then
it
it had slapstick humor in there with like throwing Hux around.
Yeah.
No one's taken seriously, really. No one has any gravitas. And then this one was just cranked that up way to 11. Like there was one character that almost shone through, and he was the General Pride guy.
Yeah, I kind of liked him. He's sort of
you could tell the actor was really trying to put something into it, and I was like, okay, I appreciate your effort, man. It's just the wrong spot, but it's coming through a little bit.
Yeah, they could have done a whole lot more with that character. That would have been really interesting, especially because if Kylo's going to be switching sides in this movie, which is what he's supposed to do, then you know, you just have this General Pride, a dumb name, really bad names in this movie. Sorry,
wait. No, it's not dumb. Not dumb. Okay, because Pride is spelled with an I. This guy's name is spelled with a Y.
Yeah, clever. Yeah, the names are atrocious in this movie. Just
Exegol.
The naming. Yeah, oh gosh.
Babu Frick. Dio. I don't know if you remember. That's the droid.
Yeah, I remember.
Sad.
I remember.
Sad.
Yeah, so the names are just really, really, really bad, and they keep saying them, and you're like, okay, stop saying that. That sounds really bad. Stop saying it, and they just keep doing it. Oh, okay, so that's a side point, but yeah. So with that guy, they could have used him to create. Why am I trying to save this movie? Like, you could have done something with that character, and you didn't. You clearly set him up to be like a Grand Moff Tarkin, and then you didn't do anything with that.
And
so
the
it was all
character
for nothing.
He obviously had enough gravitas as an actor to be able to pull it off.
Yeah, he clearly was.
And you totally wasted it. Then the Kylo wasted it. And here's the thing about this film, which is why we won't spend too much time here, is because as little artistic merit as Last Jedi has for what it was doing, just tearing down art as a medium.
Yeah.
Or at least what he was attempting to do. This one, it doesn't even try. It legitimately doesn't. It's a response, because Abrams did the first film, Rian Johnson did the second movie, and then Abrams was called in to do the third movie.
Yeah.
And what it feels like is he watched Last Jedi and was like, he ruined all my ideas. Ruined them. I'm gonna ruin his ideas. And he just like, and there's a bunch of intentional moments in there where you're like, isn't that what?
Yeah, like she goes to burn Luke's lightsaber, and then Luke comes up, catches up as a Force ghost, because Force ghosts can interact with the world now.
And he catches it. He's like, you shouldn't throw your weapon. I was like, you threw it in the last movie. And that's the thing. Like, it's clearly the filmmakers bickering.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really care about your arguments, you guys. But that's why the plot's so thin. Is because they kind of want to disregard the existence of the previous two movies because of Last Jedi.
Uh-huh.
And so he wants to cram all this stuff, like 3 movies worth of movie, into this one movie, and it is not done well.
Right.
It's just there's
and he wants
too
all
much.
the Marvel money that
Right.
they got from Endgame.
Exactly.
And
So he has a couple of
Infinity
those
War.
moments in there.
Yeah.
And it just like it leaves you tired at the end. Everyone's running the whole time. You don't get a chance to really understand what's going on at any point.
Even things he introduces to do stuff with, he just doesn't commit to. So Rey accidentally kills Chewbacca by using the Force in a way that shouldn't be used. And then, yep. Then that ends up not being true. Chewbacca is fine. So it's sort of like, okay, so this was supposed to be a moment for her to realize, oh no, I have darkness in me. I was leaning into that, and
the consequences.
And there's now consequences for that. And I experienced those consequences. I don't want that. How do I prevent myself from getting into this anymore? Doesn't matter, because Chewie didn't actually die, so there is no consequences. Don't worry about it. You're good. And so it was just this,
it
I was like, why do we need all of this then? What's the point? Like,
it contradicts itself a couple times, because they did that at the end as well, where Emperor's like, if you strike me down, then we will become one, and all the Jedi or all the Sith would become us, or whatever. And then she kills him. And it doesn't happen. I was like,
well, she didn't kill him.
Yeah,
she deflected the attack.
Boom, baby.
And his Force lightning
know what
came
two
back
lightsabers
at him.
do.
So when he was shooting Force lightning out, it hit the lightsabers, then it came back and hit him. And when he recognized this was happening, he just kept doing it. And he was thinking to himself, gosh, if only there was some way to stop
there was a
casting
solution.
Force lightning on myself to prevent myself from dying. Yeah, that would be really great right now.
Like, this is the third time this has happened. Still haven't found a solution.
When he did it with Mace Windu, it actually kind of made sense, because he was trying to make himself look like the victim in front of Anakin.
Sure.
You could at least argue that he was like, oh, Anakin, look how terrible this is. You could have seen that. But in this, he was just like, I'm just giving suicide.
I'm dead. She got me. It's done. But so he does it in the last movie too, in Return of the Jedi, because like Vader lifts him up. But it surprises him, so he comes up and the lightning's still kind of splashing around everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And then he throws him down, and then it explodes or whatever. So it's like those two, he
doesn't have a lot of time to react to that. I mean, he could just immediately stop.
Right.
But he's also like, maybe I can get Vader, or like, what's happening? I mean, there's not, unlike Vader portrayed me, that like, you can understand him being in like total just like, but this is just like, he's got plenty of time.
Yeah. And there's no one to convince either. He's like, oh no, I guess I'll die soon, I suppose. Just stop. Just turn it off. What are you doing? And it's the dumbest thing, because there's nothing to indicate. And this is my point, is that there's no buildup or payoff and he keeps doing these payoffs and just expecting you to go with it. It's like, well, she crossed the lightsabers, so we should be excited. And it's like, what does crossing the lightsabers do? How does
she crossed the lightsabers? Okay, she had 2 of them.
2, baby.
Anytime somebody has 2 lightsabers.
You ever use 2 lightsabers against Force lightning? Of course you didn't. So now we know how it works.
That's what Anakin should have done.
Right.
He should have forced back all the way back in Attack of the Clones. He should have taken Obi-Wan's lightsaber and then
boom,
and done that on Count Dooku. He would have killed Count Dooku. Count Dooku would have been dead.
Would have been done. But no. He probably could have gotten Grievous that way too. It was like, well, you got 4. Boom, baby. 2. Yeah, it just makes no sense. It's like, why does this work this way? The thing that I've heard within lore is that Mace Windu's kyber crystal reflects lightning, that the purple has something to do with it or something. And so that's why his lightsaber was the only one who does it, because Obi-Wan deflects Dooku's lightning.
Oh my gosh, there's lore for deflecting Force light. Well, no, wait a minute.
It just absorbs into his lightsaber.
In Obi-Wan's you're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah.
In Attack of the Clones.
Oh
so when Mace Windu does it, the thing that everyone was coming up with was like his crystal could like throw it back or whatever. I was like, okay. And the point was because Mace Windu plays with the light and the dark, and that's why he has a purple lightsaber and not like a green or a blue. This is all lore that's not explained in the movies, which is the problem with the prequels for sure.
I mean, that's definitely like,
but at least it's interesting
issue. Which, I agree that like the prequel should be held accountable to that, but it's also like, it's not the kind of thing where it changes so much about the story. Like the end result is still going to be the same. Yeah. Whereas in this, it's like, this does change the outcome because he freaking dies. Like it straight up kills the man. So like, okay.
You know what it could be? It could be that they're setting up, you know, that standalone Rey movie that they're potentially making?
Standalone what?
Rey movie.
Oh, I didn't know they were doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're making. So
That's a great idea.
what I think they should do with it. Here's the thing, Disney. I'm gonna give you this for free, okay?
Free tip.
Eliminate Jar Jar. You gave up your chance to use him. You should have, but you didn't.
Yep.
This one, you set it up already. Palpatine's in Rey. That's why he did it. That's why he allowed her to kill him, because then he has now
Yeah.
possessed her, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And Rey will be Darth Rey. Or
Ray.
Darth, I don't know, Darth something. I don't know
Darth
what you would
something.
choose.
Yeah, probably one of Abrams' crappy names for this movie. Maybe he died because, or maybe she can kill him this way because he's actually killing himself. She's not killing him. It's the deflection. So that's why his soul doesn't, because she didn't stab him. She was like, hey, I've got these
Oh.
cross lightsabers. You come at me, bro, you gonna die. And he
It's-
was like,
You're going to kill yourself.
I'm going to push through that nonsense. I don't care. And then when it seems like it's not working, he keeps going with it. And she's like, this is on you, man. I'm not killing you. I'm just standing here holding
it's the
two
Batman
cross
thing.
lightsabers.
I'm not going to kill you, but I don't have to save you. That's basically what they did.
I mean, it's
Don't
crazy
accept
that, like,
either, but okay, sure.
I know. It's
Yeah,
crazy
sure.
that she can even do that because, like, you saw moments before, like, just within this own movie, he goes, like, "Rah!" with, like, force lightning into the air, and it, like,
Oh,
decimates,
yeah,
like, hundreds
everything.
of ships and just, like, destroys them, like, dismantles and just rips them apart. And you're like, whoa, this dude's freaking strong. And then he goes over and it's like, 2 lightsabers. Psh! I mean, he's even holding out okay with just one.
Right. She's just like, yeah. It's so dumb. Yeah. That's why we really didn't delve into the artistic merit of this film, because of stuff like that.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. His whole stance is like, and I appreciate the clip of that interview where J.J. Abrams takes all of like 3 minutes to try to get to the sentence in which he's just describing what Rian Johnson did. And then eventually he settles on the word counterintuitive. Which is like, because clearly he's in an interview, so he's like, well, I can't say that he's
Right.
so his mind just is going through the list like, he's a moron, he's an idiot, he sabotaged me, everything's ruined, what am I supposed to do? He's going through all of those thoughts, and then he just keeps shifting down. He's like, well, come on, something Disney will approve, and then it's like, bing, counterintuitive.
Which is not the word I would have chosen myself.
Admittedly, I actually kind of feel bad for Abrams for this situation because it's like, if I had done Force Awakens and I was like, okay, I felt like I gave you some good pieces, I put it in the right direction, I gave you some interesting characters, go for it, make a movie, and then I got this, The Last Jedi, I'd be like, oh man. So I'd have to sit down and be like, so what's the goal? Where are we going now? Like, it's kind of like all the story threads are just like been shredded up. So I'm not sure what to do now.
Yeah,
so,
literally Ryan just was like, set it on fire real quick and then dropped it.
Right.
And he's like, have fun, Abrams.
He had no interest in collaborating.
Right.
And like, film is, which is great because film is not a collaborative art project.
Fair. Yeah, no one else is involved except the director, which is why we blame him for everything.
But it's just like insane to me. I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, someone else is going to have to follow behind you. And so like Abrams is being like, oh, what do I do with this? It's like, great point. Now, to be fair, I mean, a really good writer could have done something with it. I think I actually had like a preemptive draft. I don't remember what it was, but I basically just decided, I was like, you know what I would do? Just the thing, like, I would just ignore Last Jedi pretty much. I would almost treat it like it doesn't exist, and I would just like shave off like huge chunks of it. Luke's back now, and it won't make any sense, but I don't care.
Yeah.
I need Luke.
He didn't care. I don't care.
Yeah, you don't care. I don't care. I'm gonna make a self-contained movie that's enjoyable and interesting, and I would
Which
just
was my original point.
committed
Was
to that.
Don't put it in the Skywalker saga. Just make your own set of movies. They don't have to be connected. I understand you get the nostalgic money from showing
Right, because they
Mark
want
Hamill and
Harrison
stuff.
Ford.
Right.
They want, and that's another thing we need to talk about here is the inclusion of Carrie Fisher. I don't even want to talk about it that much, but we have to say it.
Yeah.
She's in this movie and in it a lot, and it's really nasty. It does not feel
It
respectful
feels
at all.
gross the whole time.
Because she's just like shoehorned into it, and she's like an AI person. I'm just like, oh my god, like why are we doing this? Why does this need to be a thing? Like, just let the woman rest in peace. Like, pay her some respect. They should have just opened the movie with her funeral and just said she died. That's what I would have done. Like, she's gone now, and we're all gonna have a sad, heartfelt moment,
Yeah.
the moment of silence at the beginning of this movie, to do a proper send off. They bury her, or they do the pyre thing because that's what they do for the Jedi, right? So I would just do one of those scenes to start the movie off, and then be like, okay, now we're moving on. And
which I
Yeah.
think, if I'm not mistaken, I think she died in the middle of filming Last Jedi. And Last Jedi has that
Yes.
scene where she gets sucked out in space or whatever. So I thought when I was watching
as
the movie,
everyone did,
I was
this
like,
is her
oh,
death scene.
this is it. Killed by her son. And was like, all right,
But
it's
then
got
he had
some
to Mary
emotional impact.
Poppins her back in.
Yeah, and then
Right.
she comes back and you're like, ugh, why would you? You had it. You should have just taken that chance.
Yeah.
And then you get to this film, and she's clearly already gone before the starting of filming this movie, because
Right.
what they had done was taking a bunch of clips that hadn't been in Force Awakens, but
Right.
were filmed on the set of Force Awakens, and just pushed them into this.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the lines don't make a lot of sense. She doesn't have any like clear
They're
dialogue.
super generic.
Yeah, that's real janky looking.
Yeah.
And it just feels wrong as you're watching it.
Yeah,
Like,
it feels
why?
so wrong.
Why'd you guys put her here? Just, you didn't have to do this.
Yeah, just as like artistic practice, because it's not like you're writing a book where you could just do whatever with your characters. They
Right.
don't exist. But when you're working with a movie, you have real actors
Right.
here, and they become part of that conversation. And
Yeah.
what bothers me so much is that you're taking this person who's not committed to this project, who can't be here to actually satisfy the role,
Yep.
and yet you're like, power on through. So the way I see it, you get two choices. Either you hire a new actor to play the character,
Sure.
or you just end things and move on. And it's the same problem with Rogue One, because they have to bring Grand Moff Tarkin back. And I'm like, can you just find an actor who looks kind of like him?
Right.
And I don't want to harp on it, but it's just like, it's just such a weird, like, it's just clear to Disney. It's so important to us that you see the character exactly as they were.
Right.
And, screw the actor getting a new actor who could get paid for this project. Forget that noise. Screw the actor's rights.
CGI
They're
monstrosity,
dead, but
baby.
I own them. I
Yep.
own them, and so I can put them in there in my movie to make my profit. And I hate that. I think it's so underhanded and scummy. I just can't stand it.
It does make one wonder where the line is. And not to jump too far into a philosophical topic at the end of this, but
Yeah.
it does make you wonder, like, well, what is okay to do? Because, I think they used AI versions of James Earl Jones' voice, but he's not dead. Obviously, he's just done acting.
Yeah.
He-
Did he approve that?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He was fine with
As
it.
long as he gave his approval.
Well, I wonder if Carrie Fisher also gave her approval, but
Did she give her approval to be an AI person, or did she sign up, say like, yes, I will act in that movie, and then die before she was? You know
Good
what I'm
point.
saying? Because like,
well, because and her daughter was in the film too, so I'm assuming that she had some kind of a say in the rights to her likeness or whatever.
yeah,
And I'm assuming Disney has rights to her likeness, but also that just feels kind of like,
yeah. I just don't think I don't think that's something you should be allowed to like even sell. It's kind of
Fair.
like, there are certain things where it's just like you're asking a person to give up something of their dignity, so you just shouldn't even ask. It doesn't matter that you could. It's kind of like a Faustian argument, right? It's like he sells his soul to the devil,
right.
and like anytime that happens in his story, it's just like, ugh, like you shouldn't have even asked for that. It's too precious of a thing. And
Well,
this
that's the
feels
point of
kinda
that
like
argument,
that.
yeah.
It's just like, ugh.
Yeah, I mean, an argument can be made there, but this film
Yeah, I'm
specifically.
getting into my personal sensibilities, but I just felt like it was super
Well, just
disrespectful.
within this film, I think an argument can be made that it was done inappropriately, disrespectfully, and it wasn't a great send off in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, there was no respect paid at all.
Uh-huh.
Like I think of a scene where, like, when Dumbledore dies or something, like, it makes
Yeah.
sure to just stop the movie, and it's like, we're all gonna remember what this character meant to Harry and
Yeah.
to us,
Mhm.
and we're all gonna pay respects.
Well, even then, case in point, the original actor for Dumbledore did die,
Oh, and they switched
and
over.
they had a new actor play Dumbledore, and like, yeah, it's a transition, it's different, but like, I mean, what do you do? He's not with us
Right.
anymore. Like, we still need the character.
Right.
I don't think he would have been like, oh, no more Harry Potter films. If you don't have me as Dumbledore, you
It's
can't make
over.
any more Harry Potter. It's all over for everybody. Like, who would think that? That's
Sure.
crazy.
And arguably, you have more to work with here because of modern technology, and you have a bunch of footage that you can play
Sure.
with and stuff. So my argument with this movie specifically would be, they knew that she had passed away
Right.
before the filming.
Right.
And at that point, what should have happened was that, okay, we are just going to pay homage to Carrie Fisher.
Right.
And if she had just shown up as like a Force ghost or something, or whatever,
Sure.
something to kind of like, it's almost a nod from the film. This is one time I'd be okay with like a meta type thing, a nod to the audience as to like, this is my farewell kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Then at least you could be like, all right, this is kind of her goodbye and like ours to her, right?
Yeah.
As fans of the films for however long, like we can acknowledge this passing. But instead they make her like this character.
Yeah,
she tries to
she's
be
like a mentor
active,
character. She's
and then,
like a big role in the story, and it's like, what are we
and then
doing?
she dies with her son or whatever, and it like takes him off,
takes
and
him out and
it's just weird. Like it didn't make any sense. It wasn't done in a respectful manner. It didn't feel like okay, we have released Leia as the character now. We've laid her to rest. It was kind of like, she's dead now. She's dead in universe and in real life. She's gone. Let's move on. Like we got the rest of this movie to get to. I was like, ooh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it felt wrong in Last Jedi, and it really felt wrong in this movie.
Yeah,
on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, I mean, Rian Johnson, I guess, started that because he didn't properly resolve the character,
right?
Like he should have done when she actually
Mary
did
Poppins,
pass.
baby.
Yeah, exactly. But then then it's like Abrams just perpetuates it. Like, why didn't you put a stop to this and be like, no, we're done. Like, we have to do a different story thing. I mean, you clearly weren't lacking for ideas. You
got too many ideas, arguably.
Yeah, exactly. You have Sith the dark side is a contagion now. That's something new in this movie because C-3PO reads it, and when they extract it from his brain, he wakes up and his eyes are red. He's a Sith now, and he's like, I'm gonna destroy all of you or whatever. And then they like wipe that from his memory, and then he's kind of memory lost for a little while for some stupid jokes. It's like, oh my gosh. So that happens. Then you've got other ideas like Poe. He has like this old fling that shows up, and they have this whole like situation, and she's like, I'm gonna shoot you. Like nothing would please me more than to like blow your brains all over the snow. Like she like literally says a line like that, and then it's within not even 5 minutes. Not even 5 minutes has passed, and she's like, I'm gonna give you this coin. And this coin will get you
This is my one ticket out of here.
It's my one ticket off this planet. It's the most precious thing to me. I want you to have it. Why? Like, what? This makes no sense. And she's wearing a Power Ranger outfit. We just have to say.
It's really distracting. Not that any of the outfits particularly look good. Like Rey's probably looks okay.
Yeah, Rey looks fine. Well, actually, and like Poe and Finn, some of the main cast looks fine. But yeah, she just looks like.
If we're jumping into I mean, this is definitely more minutia, which
I
don't want to spend too much time on, but I do want to address as well. So they set up in Last Jedi that potentially Rose is interested in Finn.
Oh boy, this one.
And it's awkward there because it's not set up properly, and like they don't go anywhere with it. She like plants a kiss on him, and he's like, "It's about my friends are dying behind me. I really don't. This isn't the time." And then the rest of the movie goes, and it's not addressed again. This movie, they go so far. They're like, "Okay, everybody hated Rose, so the character that played Rose is not going to get any screen time.
Right?
She's going to be pushed in the background. We don't need to see this girl's face. She's the worst." And it's like, no, she's not the worst. You guys wrote her that way.
Right?
It's your fault. This poor lady thinks she has an opportunity to be in Star Wars.
Right.
And you totally screwed her over. That's not our fault. We hate how you wrote her.
Right.
She sucked as a character.
Right.
We didn't say she sucked as an actress, you moron. It was messed up. And then
it's like, don't listen to the fans who attacked Rose, and they shouldn't have done that. That's terrible. Or the actress who plays her.
That's messed up.
It's like, this isn't her fault.
Yeah, she didn't write it, you morons.
Yeah.
Then outside of that, they're like, yeah, we cannot have Finn in love with Rose anymore.
Yeah,
we're gonna
that's gone now.
They're gonna have. We cannot do this interracial thing. He's gonna get a lady that looks just like him. Yeah, and we're gonna just go with that.
Yeah, it's super racist.
It's not only is it racist, but it's also super contrived because they find her on this random it's just this back alley planet.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm just like you. I was also a stormtrooper, and we didn't want to shoot the innocents. And I was like,
when she said that, I cringed so hard. I was like,
the worst.
Whoa! I was like, so I was like, are you serious? Like, everyone black is a slave in this universe? What's wrong with you? Are you out of your mind?
Did you guys
That's
seriously
so offensive.
do this? And now they've got to be together. We can't have
pissed me
Ray.
off so
Ray and
much.
Finn cannot be together. Rose and Finn cannot be together.
Yeah, they can't. Aside from the fact that they can't make up their minds of what to do with
Right.
Finn's love interest, because in the first film he's supposed to be interested in Ray,
Right.
and so you're like, okay, there might be something there. In the next film, it's like with Rose, and like, oh, that didn't work out. So now it's like with a brand new character, and it was just like, gosh, like, I just
Commit to something, man. And seriously,
the whole thing was just awful.
And the last thing that they did was in that similar vein was, and this was touted, so I knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to be there. They were like, oh, it's the first gay kiss in Star Wars. Here's the thing. That character does not show up as a gay character at all through the whole movie. She shows up like once, and she says she delivers a line to like Poe or something, and then disappears. And so you see this character, but you have no idea about who she is, where she came from, what she's doing. You're just like, okay, there's a random person here.
Yeah.
She comes in at the end and kisses another girl. Here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of that kind of stuff being in Star Wars, period. But even when they put it in there, they can't even commit. That's my problem.
That's the issue. Yeah,
that's more offensive to me. Because you claim to be...
You don't actually care about those people at all.
You claim to be pandering to this group of people, when in reality, you're making it short enough that you can take it out when you send it over to China.
Exactly.
That was my issue, is like, I know you took that out. I know you did.
Right.
Because you don't want to lose your audience over there, and they're not going to stand for that. In my opinion, it's like, this isn't something that belongs in Star Wars in the first place, because it's just like... This doesn't make any sense. Like, you just run in and just throw this in because, like, look at me, I got this thing in there. So it's irritating because it doesn't have any artistic merit. It doesn't have any character value. It has nothing to do with the story. It's just in there to pander.
Right. It's a political thing that they've now added in the hopes that American audiences and like Western audiences will appreciate that and be more inclined to go see it because of it. And then you know, cookie cutter it out and send it overseas so that way you can make more profit for other audiences who aren't going to like that content. And like, I understand that
which in itself has no artistic merit. If you are going to make a statement, commit to that statement. Like, either make it or don't make it.
Just make, like, you know, it's like, okay, well, Ray's gay now. It's like, all right, well, there you go. At least like you committed to the action. You're confirmed. It's like, agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. That's the character. That's what we're rolling with.
Sure.
But this is such a larger problem of all of these three movies, is just this total lack of commitment.
Right.
We didn't sit down and decide what the story was going to be, where we're going to go with it.
Right.
What the message is going to be, how much we're going to adhere to Lucas's vision versus how much we want to do our own thing. That conversation never happened. Because there's no evidence in the films whatsoever. So if it did happen, it was just all theory, and then it got thrown out the window and burned. So that's one major problem with it. The other one that I think is worth touching on is the fact that this movie, more so than any other film, feels like a theme park ride. It is literally a theme park ride. There are like certain sequences where they're doing this. They're like going through space. What did they call it? Like
light speed skipping.
Light speed skipping. That's
dumbest idea ever.
So they like zap. So I couldn't even be. I couldn't invest in this whether it works or not. I was just like, whatever.
They shoot to a planet, and then they shoot to Cloud City, and then they shoot to this gas planet, and you see like a giant. It looks like a dune worm.
Yeah.
And it's just they just jumped to a bunch of different planets, and it feels like there's a Disneyland ride called Star Tours. You ever been on that one?
I've not been on that.
It's a 4D ride, and you sit in this big thing, and it shifts around and makes you, it's big screen. It looks like you're on a ship. It does that exact thing.
Yeah.
You zap over to a planet, and it's just to get you to experience a bunch of planets that you've seen in these films.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, oh, cool, we're at Cloud City now, right on. And you got like C-3PO talking to you while you're in there and stuff. I was like, this is Star Tours.
Yeah.
In a major blockbuster film
that
has a budget that is astronomical, and this is what you did.
There's like literally
I could go to Disneyland and like I'll just experience this right now.
Right. Well, now because it's an ad to go on Star Tours. That's what it is now. It's an advertisement.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, because there's literally like a shot where like they push through one of the light skips. They stop on this planet, and they're flying on this like gassy green planet. Not even 2 seconds pass, and this huge like worm alien thing shows up, and they're like, oh no, we're gonna get eaten by it, and like for just like, what are the chances that you would warp to a planet and to be at that exact moment in time when this giant alien thing arises? It's just like mind blown.
Yeah.
The level of coincidence in this movie is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
It's so much.
Yep. Yeah, there's a suspension of disbelief that is expected of a general audience. And then there's the audience that was expected to be in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's like suspension of disbelief counter just broke. And they're like,
yeah,
just treat it like a theme park ride.
Yeah.
Just treat it like that.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
And then by the end, you're like, I wanted to watch a movie. What are we doing here? This is not what I wanted to do today.
Yeah, it just has no integrity. That's the problem.
True.
Because again, there's just no commitment to anything, and it just does all this stuff to pander, and then makes, oh, let's tweak some things over here because it fits my personal sensibilities, and let's tweak some other things because it fits like someone else, what I think their sensibilities will be.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody should be offended at this movie, like literally everyone. Like I don't care like where you are on like culturally or the political spectrum, like I can't think of a single person who should be like, this wasn't offensive, this was good. I'm like, this is offensive. It's like, ugh, these are no. Like,
yeah, the lack of commitment I think is what is the most egregious in this film, because and they do that intentionally with like Chewie not dying, or C-3PO getting his memories back. They keep setting these things up that you think are actual consequences, and then they just remove them, and that happens on a bigger scale as well, like with Ben getting with this other character, this new character. I don't even remember her name because I don't think they even mentioned.
They don't treat the character with any kind of respect, so you don't get to really know her. They just give her the backstory, the slave narrative backstory. It's like, oh my gosh, are you so insensitive?
I remember looking over and you're just like,
I was in shock.
Are you serious?
It's like, are we doing this right now? Was there no sensitivity person on set? Good God, did anybody have the will to like? I'd have been like, whoa, what are we doing?
Hey, guys,
we can't do this. Are you out of your mind?
I think we should think about this one a little bit.
Gosh.
Maybe he should just get with Rey. Let's just do it.
I get like the character's backstory, but it's like, all right, we gotta cast somebody else, and we gotta give her a different role. Like, you can't do this. Like, there's very obvious messaging with this.
Right.
And it's super...
Well, it's so blatant because it's not fleshed out at all.
Yeah.
They literally see each other, and then she tells the same story that he went through, and it's like love at first story. And it's like, oh, okay, sure. Because the thing is, too, he's been rejected by Rey.
Yeah.
He basically hardcore friends Rose. He like taps her on the shoulder at one point and then walks off. It's like, ugh. And then you get to this character, and it's like, you're not gonna do it, are you? No. Oh no.
I have to wonder what it was like actually working on this set, because the one redeemable thing about this movie is John Boyega is your man.
Yep.
So he's backing you up because he says a lot of lines that you're thinking
They're
about.
almost meta.
Yeah, almost, where he's like, wait a minute, what's that thing we're after again? And I was just like, oh, thank you. Anytime he spoke, I was like, oh, thank you. Like that's kind of what I was trying to figure out right now.
I was real confused. Thanks, John. Appreciate you. And he doesn't come across as taking the movie too seriously as well.
Right.
He just seems like he's not super enveloped in it.
Like
and
Daisy
so you kind of
Ridley
just like
and Oscar Isaac, they're like, oh, I got to do it seriously because Abrams is telling me to be serious. And John Boyega's like, oh, this movie is
you're just kind of like, I'm gonna follow this guy because I relate to him just on every level right now. I just need to follow him. But and then he has those lines where there's a couple of them where he's just like, what? And you're like, I agree. That's what I was saying. What?
And it's not just the script, because sometimes the line itself doesn't really work, but like his expression is like enough to be like, yeah, that's what this is. And so at some point you start to tune in that he's doing this. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or if that's just him.
It's gotta be.
But it's hilarious.
Because he went on to an interview later and they were like, what do you see your future as in Star Wars? And he goes, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, if they offered you more. And he's like, no way. You're not going to Disney Plus me. Yeah. Cause,
really?
Yep.
Wow.
He's like, no way. I'm not sticking around for that. He basically gave a hard no. I was like, way to go, man.
Yeah.
Because he actually has a lot of charm. Like, I'd watch whatever he's jumping into.
Yeah,
like,
he has good charisma, and he brings great energy to his movies.
Which sucks because he is so underutilized in this movie. Like, His
Yeah, and
character is
really
just
in all
dragged through the
three,
mud.
especially
Yeah.
these last two, though. Yeah,
Well, the
they're
first
just,
one, first one I think is the least egregious. I actually
Yeah,
enjoyed his
agreed.
arc there. He
Yeah.
was definitely underused, but like at least he was there and he had something to say, and it was a decent message.
Yeah.
Second movie just becomes this like tool for Scream and Ray's name the whole movie, and then
Yeah.
he does a lot of the same thing here.
Yeah, and there's like the whole like, Ray has a number of lines, and I guess this is like old news, like it even matters anymore. But like Ray has a number of lines where she kind of like downplays what the other characters are telling her.
Yeah.
But like John Boyega's character in particular, he's right. She's the one who's wrong, and he says it on like multiple occasions. He's like, you're not really like you, and she's just like, Psh,
You don't know me.
Nobody knows who I am, and he's like.
Like,
well,
what you said was kind of dark just
could
now.
I maybe try? Like, I feel like I don't know. Like, I want to just take a shot.
I feel like I got some merit at this point, right?
At least he wants to know who you are.
He cares at least. And you're just like, no, you don't know me.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Edgelord.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been our experience with the sequel trilogy. I really don't ever want to talk about it again.
I don't ever want to watch it again. They're all really bad. Yeah.
At some point, I think the most that we'll do is I would like to do a video where we rank these films in some kind of order.
Yeah.
Probably rewatchability.
I'm fine with tier lists. We could do tier lists all day.
We don't have to break them down any further. And I did try to keep this as like nebulous as possible because I don't want to make this into a movie critique, right? I don't want to I don't want to be critiquing the film itself.
Well, when we're trying to talk about the artistry of it, though, and you're committing these like really unforgivable things, and it's just like so blatantly just a piece of media advertising. It's just like this is just so gross.
It's in service to understanding why this doesn't have artistic merit, or why its artistic merit is less valuable than opposed to something else. And I know that's mostly a subjective way of measuring something, but when you come to these movies, they are so egregious in just the way that they just eliminate artistic merit altogether, and on so many levels too. And it's just like how you can't really discuss, and we jump into it with the Rotten Tomatoes scores just to kind of give you an inkling of like how it's responded to. And we try to do our best to relate to some of it, even though sometimes we can't.
This was a hard one.
Dude, Rise of Skywalker. Gosh, these are all so bad that, like, okay, so 86%. I can't make an argument there. There's no way I can even understand. I cannot comprehend. I think the best explanation I can give you is that
explosions.
The people,
there's a lot of those.
The people who did stick around to see this one, the ones that were left over from the Last Jedi and Solo and stuff like that.
Okay.
They were the ones that came in and were just like, I don't care. So they either the crowd,
or they liked the last couple.
No, I think it's actually the opposite. I think it's the people that didn't like Last Jedi that were seeing all the middle fingers that Abrams was throwing at Rian Johnson. Were like, I can agree with that.
Oh, okay. So they wanted some.
So they had that, and they had just like this thing. It's only escapism in the fact that you are not allowed time to think about anything. You're not allowed time to breathe at all.
Yeah.
So I think audiences treated it like a theme park ride, and you just kind of like, you get to the end, you're like, all right, flashing lights and action and explosions. All right, I got all that. So
I see what you're saying. So everybody is just like, it's just a theme park ride, and then that's what you get. And so they're just like, thumbs up.
It's almost like they accepted the diminishment of Star Wars into this schlock, and they were like, well, here we are. What we got for what it is, like, I'll accept it, I guess. And that's the only argument I can make for it. And I'm not trying to diminish audiences. Like, I'm not trying to say that they're dumb for this. I'm just saying that when you've been beaten down like that to get to this point, you're just like, all right, that's passable. I thought I was going to be slapped in the face again like the last movie.
Yeah.
So at least it felt less like that and more like...
Well, and if you're bringing like, your teenage kids or whatever, or your middle schoolers, and they're going to like it, right? They're not going to catch up on like the racist nuance. They're not going to see it that way. And
I love how much you're like on that. You're like, man, that was rough.
It was because it was so blatant. I was like, how did nobody not catch this? I was like,
it
what
really
is
makes you
wrong
question,
with you?
like, was no one in there like,
Yeah.
don't think this is gonna do what you think it's gonna do.
Because sometimes I've had my friends point out stuff in media, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't see it that way, but you're kind of right. That is leaning in that direction.
Kind of
And
overtones, yeah.
yeah, and I'm not the best at figuring out those things. But this one, I was just like instantly, I was like, you're not even gonna try to sugarcoat this, like, really? Wow. Okay. Like, what else am I supposed to take from that?
Not much.
Ugh.
I mean, no, you got the message.
Yeah.
That was the message for sure.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, no more interracial couples here. All right, this is this is it.
Yeah, and it's just like,
But yeah, just to say, like, we weren't trying to be super critical of each individual
well, yeah,
movie.
because
It
like
was
if you're
just
a parent,
like,
you're tired, you got your, it's just like
Right.
whatever. Like you're gonna be like, trying to just scroll into your phone in the middle of the movie,
right,
So like, yeah, I'm not saying like, and maybe there's someone out there who just like didn't catch that, and I guess like if you didn't catch it, or if you didn't feel like it was a big deal because it was like a small moment in the movie, because it is a small moment in the movie. It's just like the background material. Okay, I can't. It's just like, it bothers me too much.
it was rough.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
sometimes stuff just strikes us differently, I guess, and
Yeah, well,
maybe
and that's
people
not
just
even.
got-
Yeah, that's not even what I was trying to address. It's definitely worth addressing, but more of just this segment is made specifically to address artistic merit and how it's perceived by these two groups.
yeah,
And unfortunately, we had to delve into a lot of details and to understand why we don't agree that these have artistic merit on most levels. Really, I mean, I was actually, on average for me, I was pretty fair with these films comparatively to what I usually am. I think these are absolute garbage. Force Awakens
Yeah.
is the only one I give a little bit of credence to, just because it has some nostalgic value for me.
yeah,
I mean, it's almost 10 years old. So, like, 10 years ago, when I was able to see the movie in theaters, I was 22.
mm-hmm.
The other two, though, like, I give no merit. I mean, last night, I was just laughing at your reactions for the most part, just because
Pretty
I was just
much,
like, this
yeah.
is this is not worth anything. It doesn't produce any themes that are worth thinking about. It doesn't produce scenes that are worth rewatching. Like, it is just garbage.
Yeah. And the part that I'm going to harp on this one just for a bit, because it was a problem back in Force Awakens, and it was just never resolved throughout all three of these movies, is that they changed from a male lead to a female lead. And I was like, okay, well, Luke is such an inspiring character. It's cool now that we're going to try to do, similarly. And they had to just ruin that character and like give her no meaningful arc. It's
Yep.
like they're bad movies. And it's like, great. So like, the whole idea of like giving like women a chance to, or like young girls to experience this like interesting character and kind of grow up with them and perceive that some kind of, some good like core values out of it. That's now gone,
Right.
because it's like been ridiculed into oblivion. And not by us,
Right.
mind you. This
Well,
is
it's on
like
a storytelling
long over.
level. If you make a weak character, people are going to intrinsically understand that.
Right,
Luke
and it's just
starts
upsetting.
as a fairly weak character, but he grows into a maturity that
point.
people can understand, and that's the point of a hero's journey.
Right, because he has vulnerabilities.
Right.
But it's like, oh, she's a girl, so she can't have any vulnerabilities. We don't
But
want
I
to
mean,
display
look
that.
at the
It's like,
look at
dude.
the audience that likes Rey. It's like my 7-year-old niece, right? And she's
Yeah.
not allowed to watch most of this film. All that
Yeah.
she knows is that Rey is a girl like her.
Yeah.
And she's part of the Star Wars universe, and she likes Star Wars.
Right.
And so to me, it's like, okay, you gave him something, but you didn't give him any substance that they can last with. Like, I can go back
Right.
now, because I was her age when I saw it in the first time. I can go back now and watch these films and still be like, yeah, Luke's got a lot of nuance, a lot of great characteristics about
Right.
him, and I can still relate to him on
and
that level.
They're good enough films that they're actually worthy of study, and so they come up
Right.
in conversation, right?
Right.
And so, like the fact that these movies can't do that at all, it's just like, oh, this was this cultural, water drop.
And I think that's another issue of pretension that it bleeds through, because they keep
Right.
saying, like, look at us, we've got this strong female lead. And it's like, man, shut up. We've had female leads since the freaking 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like, we got Ripley, we've got Leia, we've got Daenerys. Like, that's our stuff. We're
Yeah.
the nerds had that long before you retards showed up. Like, you can't just come in and be like, oh, we swapped out Luke and now it's great. It's like, nah, your character
It's
sucks,
not that
man.
simple. It's like
Yep.
you still have to write the character well, and you have
Right.
to give them a meaningful arc.
Exactly.
And because you didn't do that, it's like, and because everything else in this movie is wrong.
Right.
So
yeah, it just overshadows all that anyway.
yeah, exactly. And so I don't know. It's a shame, because there's a lot of people who defend these movies. I feel like in time these will actually just get worse. And the reason
Yeah,
I
they're not
say
gonna
that
age
is
well.
there's sometimes a part of you will want to say like, well, like this was what I like. It was in the direction of what I wanted.
Sure.
And so you give it like a little bit of a pass, and then you give it a little bit more of a pass. But then over time, that starts to dwindle, and you'll get better representation. And you'll be like,
Right.
well, that was actually the good one. So now I don't have to
Right.
pay any tribute to this piece of garbage anymore.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we've gone on long enough. We're an hour and 45 minutes. Whew.
Yeah. Well,
These are rough films, and I think, like I said, this is the last time we'll ever probably talk about these.
hopefully.
So. I am your host, Tyler Holm. This is Mitch, my co-host. Thank you for joining me again.
Thank you for having me as your overly artistic friend.
my oaf. Thank you guys for watching the HolmFront. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. As ridiculous as it got. Join us next time. Good one.